Today I bring you the new part of our hero's story, Kunon, a child born into a world that shows no mercy to the weak, born deprived of the greatest blessing a human can have, the gift of sight. But instead of surrendering to the darkness, he chose to turn it into a terrifying weapon. Kunon was a name meant to disappear among thousands of failed mages, but he transforms into a living legend, walking the earth, seeing what no one else can see, breaking every law placed before him. And with every step, he gets closer to the truth, discovering that the world is far more dangerous than he ever imagined, and that the power inside him could either save him or destroy everything around him. If you've seen the previous parts, jump straight to the new chapter. If it's your first time here, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe. We're trying to hit 1,000 subs ASAP. Let's get into the story. Kuno was a young boy born in a fantasy world with the hero's scar on his face, which is considered to be incredibly rare, which was left on him by a holy knight. But the price he had to pay for that was the loss of his eyesight forever. Kuno never knew what seeing something even meant, and often asked his parents what seeing feels like, and his father would reply that seeing means being able to perceive colors, see all the beautiful things God made in this world, and it is a very important thing if you want to find big goth daddies. His mother, on the other hand, told him that the loss of his eyes is nothing compared to the hero's score he has received, and claims that it was a small price to pay. He often heard the maids of his household pity him for the fact that he was blind, which irritated Kuno, who just wanted to be treated as a normal boy of his age. He was soon given a magic instructor as well, which he wasn't totally a fan of since he couldn't understand what would that do to a person who can't see. One of the maids guides him towards the room where his new magic tutor was waiting, and Kuno asks the maid what's the point of learning any magic if he can't even walk on his own and needs someone to handhold him at all times. The maid understands his frustration and tells him that he was born with the water crest on his forehead, which means that he has a great deal of magical affinity, especially to water magic. And if he learns the magic, he can do wonders for the world and himself. Kuno doesn't really agree with that, but decides not to argue as the maid opens the door where his new tutor, Jen, was waiting for him. The blue-haired nerd baddie greets Kuno warmly and introduces herself before starting with their first lesson. The lesson turns out to be a pretty easy one for Kuno, who immediately manages to get his staff wet with a simple spell. Jen praises him for his talents while Kuno asks what he did with the magic. Jen explains that he just used a simple magic spell, which produced a blob of water the size of an eyeball. A sudden realization hits Kuno as he grabs his eyes, which scares Jen, who thinks that Kuno is one of those woke snowflakes who can't take a joke and love getting offended. But he suddenly exclaims that if he can make water blobs the size of an eyeball, then he can also create his own set of eyes. How he connected those two things is a mystery to me, but can't argue with anime logic. Some time passes by, and now Kuno isn't as emo as he was before, and has started to enjoy feeling for different things, and getting intrigued by all the different sorts of food, and the different scents in the room. He starts chowing down on lettuce, but has no idea what he is chewing on. But the maid happily tells him everything about it, and claims that she has been feeling so much better as making food is much more rewarding than before. She starts rubbing some blueberries on his face as he tries to understand the sense of everything. But soon his teacher comes by to tutor him, so he is forced to leave. His tutor Flora is a total mommy and asks what he wants to study today. Kuno replies that he wants to read about history today and wants to read about the story of the holy knight Hugh. Flora is a little surprised as the only reason he is blind is because of that holy knight, but the maid gives her the go-ahead. Flora turns to Kuno and tells him to let her know if he feels overwhelmed or uncomfortable at any points. Kuno tells her not to worry as he wants to learn anything and everything he can learn. Soon he gets to learn about the history of his own world, and how there was a fight between the demons and the humans, and it was going very badly for the humans. Thankfully, a hero emerged from the side of humanity named Hugh the Holy Knight, who finally managed to bring an end to the tyranny of the Demon King and brought peace on Earth once again. Hugh was cursed by the Demon King though, and ever since that day, every generation in his bloodline randomly gets born with something missing. Some are born without a leg, some without their teeth, and some are born without their eyes. Ever since that day, humans have been calling the disabled people of his bloodline as the reincarnations of the hero himself, as they have the star of the hero. Kunon doesn't particularly subscribe to this ideology, though, as he believes that he is more than just the reincarnation of Hugh. He is his own person, and the magical abilities he has are his own, and not just loaned to him by some hero who is long dead. He practices his magical skills every single day and keeps getting better at it, hoping to one day create his own personal set of eyes, which he got cheated on. This all comes at a price, though, as practicing so much takes a lot of mana and stamina. He falls to the ground while his maid carries him back inside. He gets up exasperated that at this rate, it will take forever for him to get his own set of eyes if he doesn't increase his stamina soon. The maid tells him that he is still only 7 years old and needs to bulk up if he wants to get strong. Kuno replies that they have to find a different way since he has been passing out just by using the most basic spells, which should be completely out of question. His maid Aiko tells him that maybe they can put him on some gear just like Sam Sulek, and maybe with some sword training, he will be soon strong enough to cast as many magic spells as he wants. Kuno agrees with that, and Aiko immediately heads out to find a good sword master for him to train with. The very next day, Aiko finds an old swordsmaster named Oru who starts training him. He gets through the basics on his first day, by which Jen also arrives, ready for the magic lessons. Jen is a little surprised at the hard work that he is putting in, whether he wants a break, but he immediately puts down the sword and get a wand, ready for the next lesson. Jen is not sure how much stamina he has remaining, so she decides to just check whether he has retained what they learned in the last lesson. Kuno immediately chants the spell, but instead of producing just one water ball, he ends up producing like 10 perfectly clear water balls. Jen is surprised, wondering how the hell did he master the spells so quickly, and realizes that this boy is definitely built different. That afternoon, Kuno gets a visitor from the royal capital who turns out to be the princess herself, called Miri. Ever since the birth of Kuno, she was betrothed to him since Kuno belonged to a noble family and he bore the scar of the hero, which is a very big thing. She didn't particularly like him though, since the last time when she came to visit him, he was always being a mo, not playing any games with her. Ever since that day, she started dreading the fact that she might have to live with a broody mofo for the rest of her life. To her surprise, when she saw him this time, he looked like a completely different person, as he smiled warmly at her, welcoming her to his mansion. She immediately asks whether something happened as he looks different today, and he replies that he has fallen in love with magic and found a new purpose in his life. He then apologizes for not paying proper attention whenever they met before this and claims that he has a lot to tell her about the new developments, and immediately produces a water ball in front of her. She immediately gets excited and impressed, but Kuno decides to raise her up and creates a rainbow with the help of his water ball, which turns out to be a total hit. He then takes her hand and shows her around the garden where they trade stories about their lives, and soon the sun starts setting and she is forced to get back in her carriage and head back to the capital again. The very next day, he tells Flora that he wants to learn all the mannerism of a gentleman so he can be a better partner to Miri, and even Flora is impressed at her thoughtfulness and starts teaching him all the courtesy that should come easy to a noble. After his lesson, Jen also arrives for her class and is shocked to see the change in Kuno's demeanor as he gives her a very formal greeting and thanks her for everything she has done till now. Jen decides to promote him from the basic spells and explains that now they can go ahead and learn about some more complex spells, which would need him to think about all the different components of his spell. For example, you can change the viscosity, the color, the temperature amongst other things, and use it in a million different ways. She then produces 2 water balls in front of him and tells him to touch both of them. Those shapes are something he is already familiar with, so he immediately grabs them and realizes that one is warm and the other one is colder. Jen replies that alterations like these are what differentiates one magician from the other one. Kuno seems to understand the concept and produces a water ball, which then plops into the cup in front of him. He then tells Aiko to have a sip, which confuses her a little, but she doesn't question him and does as she was told. The moment she tastes the water, her expression changes, as she tells them that the water tastes like apple juice. Jen is absolutely smashed by this, as she thinks about how it took her an entire sleepless night to come up with a new thing to teach him. So the least he can do is not master it immediately. That night, Kuno stays awake in his bed, holding a green and a red apple, thinking about how he can understand the taste and the scent of different things, but still he has no idea what a color is, until he manages to find a way to understand that he won't be able to create any finer alterations to his magic, let alone a set of magical eyeballs. The next day, when he was sitting for breakfast, something changes inside him. He tells Aiko that he wants some milk tea without the milk, which is stupid. But Aiko doesn't want to make fun of a disabled person, so she asks him to get her some water. He produces a water ball in the air and sends it her way when suddenly he realizes that he has been able to feel different things all of her life. And what if those things are what everyone else calls colors? He picks a green apple and asks whether this apple is red. but Aiko simply thinks that he has gone insane and tells him that it's green and not red. Then he picks a different apple and asks whether that apple is red. Aiko replies that it is indeed red in color. That's when Kuno surprises her by claiming that the basket in front of him has 3 red and 2 green apples. Aiko is shocked to hear that, but Kuno replies that he has been able to feel different things by touching them. He thinks that he can figure out what each color feels like to his fingers. This is a big improvement, and Aiko immediately runs to tell his father about the new development. He immediately asks whether Kuno can read books, and Aiko replies that he is able to trace the color of the ink on the paper and read that way. The next morning, he starts practicing his magic once again and summons a huge red-colored water ball, claiming that he can sense the color better if he makes it bigger. Just then, his mother calls out to him, which breaks his concentration, and the water ball falls on them, covering them in the red liquid. His mother gets knocked out cold, thinking that something happened and her dear son was covered in blood, which confuses Kuno, but Aiko tells him that the color of blood is red as well, and that's why his mother is so scared. While this is happening, Jen watches it from afar, thinking that the feats that Kuno is able to perform is beyond anything that she has ever seen before, and wonders whether this boy has the talent to attain the most prized title in the world and become a cerulean wizard. A couple days pass by, and now Kuno has started studying about hydromancy. He is trying to expand his horizons to see what all is he good at. But Aiko doesn't seem to understand what hydromancy is, so he tries to explain to her in very simple terms that hydromancy is simply using water in a bowl to tell the future or to find something which is missing. Aiko immediately asks whether he could find a groom for her, but Kuno tells him not to worry, as she is a beautiful maiden right in the flush of her youth, and loads of men would want to take her as a bride. Hell, if he wasn't a noble, betrothed to the royal princess, he would have taken her as a bride as well. They both laugh at that, as Aiko reminds him that she is 10 years his senior, but Kuno replies that age is just a number as far as he is concerned. Just then, Flora arrives for the lessons and takes his test, in which he passes with flying colors, with all the answers being very in-depth, politically correct, and nothing which could get him cancelled on Instagram. He thinks about the fact that she has basically taught him everything she could at this level, and gets worried about the fact that she might have taught him how to riz up the huzz too well, as he tries to flirt with every girl he lays his eyes upon. Just then, Kuno offers her some tea, and starts trying to riz her up as well, and she worries whether he might get dragged in the Me Too movement. But she thinks that it is overall better, since he always used to be sad and gloomy. Now at least he seems to be enjoying his life. Later that night, Aiko tells Kuno that they need to get ready, as his lord father wants to meet him, and has called him over to his mansion. He immediately gets ready, and soon the two of them head out into the cold night with a torch in Aiko's hand, while she complains about being cold. Kuno decides to do something about it, and uses his magic to produce 2 big blobs of water. But to Aiko's surprise, the water is warm and soft. She pushes it against her face, claiming that she would love to sleep in a bed made with this, and Kuno tells her not to worry, as this is just a prototype, and he is already getting ready for many more products. He then asks Aiko honestly whether he did something wrong in the past few days, and whether his father is calling him because he is angry at him. He remembers the last event when he created the red water ball, which caused his mother to faint, and his dad got mad at him. Aiko tells her not to worry, as he has been doing everything perfectly, so there should be no reason for his dad to be upset at him. Soon they arrive at the mansion and quickly huddle inside for some warmth, when he gets greeted by the house butler and his older brother. Kuno is very happy to see his older brother, as he doesn't get to see him very often, but his brother tells him that they don't have a lot of time because their parents are waiting in the solar. The older brother leads them to the room, and on the way, he asks Kuno whether he would like to hold his hand as a guide. But Kuno tells him not to worry, as now he is able to sense his environment a great deal better, and shouldn't have much trouble maneuvering through it. His brother thinks about the time when Kuno would always stay in his emo state, and he would always have to hold his hand to take him anywhere, even in the house. He is really surprised by the amount of change Kuno has gone through in such a small time, and wishes him the best. Soon they knock at the solar and enter inside, when his father tells him that Miss Flora claims that she has taught everything she has to teach to a noble child, and for further education, a formal school would be necessary. Kuno replies that he doesn't really want to go to a school, as he doesn't want to create problems for any classmates or teachers with his disability. Moreover, he claims that he has plans of his own, and has decided what avenue he wants to follow, and it definitely doesn't involve the school. His father laughs at it. While my father would have whooped my ass if I said this, his father claims that he thinks that formal education is for normies as well, but since it is mandatory by law for anyone of noble descent, He had to ask the king for a favor and create an exception for Kuno. Kuno replies that he can smell the nepotism already, and his father tells him to shut the hell up and take what's given to him without trying to be too woke with that. Kuno comes to the actual questions and starts asking about his pocket money, claiming that he deserves a raise considering that he has been working so hard. But just like a capitalist pig, his father declines, claiming that the next time he pulls any stunts like the garden blood incident, he is going to cut his pocket money for 6 straight months. His mother butts in to change the topic and brings the train back on the track. His father remembers why exactly he called Kuno here and tells him that while he agrees with his decision to drop out from the school, he also needs to think about his future. With the Princess Miri, since schooling is such an important part in the noble's upbringing, she might face ridicule about the fact that her husband-to-be is not even schooled properly. Surprisingly enough, Kuno understands all this and agrees to go to the school, claiming that it will be a hassle. But he can't let the princess be ridiculed because of him. His father tells him not to worry though, since with the power of nepotism and correction, he has made it so that he only has to go to the school 5 times to give the final advanced level exams and pass it to graduate. That sounds like a win-win situation to Kuno, so he immediately agrees. His older brother tells him not to worry, and he won't be alone since both him and Princess Miri are going to attend the same exam as well, so all of them can graduate together. His mom gets really excited at the fact that her son will be attending the school soon and immediately calls in Aiko, as they will have to take a bunch of measurements for his coat and other pieces of clothing. Before he can go, his father calls Ikcho back in and tells him that while Kuno is at the school, some other nobles who hate them might try to approach him and Princess Miri, and it will be his job to make sure that nothing goes wrong. Ikcho tells him not to worry, as he will always be with them and make sure his younger brother is safe. The next time Princess Miri visits him, she is excited to know that he will be attending the school with her, and tells him not to worry as she will escort him around and show him everything. Kuno wonders out loud that other nobles who are in love with her might not like that and get jealous, but Miri tells him not to worry as that will not happen. Kuno asks whether she is not popular in her school then and is just another loner, but she tells him that she is obviously very popular on the account of her being a princess, and she knows of at least 5 boys eager to court her. Kuno thinks about the fact that these things can become problematic, so he decides to get a different magic staff for self-defense. Finally, the day of departure comes and Kuno gets ready alongside Ikcho. But everyone is focused on Kuno as he looks dashing with his new cape and a new cane. He flashes a few poses before getting in the carriage, and then uses his water magic to cover the wheels of the wagon with a thin layer of water to make it more stable and less bumpy. Ikcho is pretty impressed by Kuno's ideas, while Kuno is just happy that his magical skills have some actual real-life uses, unlike a degree in gender studies or anthropology. His brother reminisces about the time when Kuno was still a gloomy emo kid and fell over because Ikcho wasn't paying attention and then started crying like a little bitch. Kuno tells him not to worry, as he is not that person anymore and is strong enough that he can outlive all of humanity. Ikcho starts getting a little worried, as his little snot of a brother is starting to talk more like a demon king than a hero's reincarnation. But he puts his thoughts aside when they finally arrive at the academy. Kuno finds Miri waiting for him outside and immediately starts flirting with her, while his older brother stands around awkwardly. Kuno soon gets a little overwhelmed by all the new stimulus as he can hear thousands of voices and feel the presence of hundreds of students inside the school. He thinks about how his earlier self would have recoiled from this, but his magic has given him the confidence he needed, and he grabs Miri's hands and enters the academy. He immediately becomes the fan favorite of the girls, as they claim that the new boy looks more like the prince in the stories than a student. While even the professor who was supposed to show him around the school who was stressed as she heard that Kuno was an extremely shy boy. But the reality looks completely different. She calls out to him and introduces herself as Professor Cast, claiming that she is going to be his guide today. He thanks her for the help and bids farewell to his brother and Miri, who promised to have lunch together. While the professor was showing him around, he had no idea that he had already made a bunch of enemies of the bullies who used to rule the school and were the most popular before his arrival. Cass takes Kuno to a separate classroom and explains that he will be giving 5 exams for his graduation, and usually there is a gap between each exam. But since the school got direct orders from his father and the king himself to bunch his exams together, Kuno seriously replies that the king and his father are besties, and what they are doing is a clear case of nepotism, which he doesn't support at all. Cass claims that she doesn't want to be dragged in any kind of political messes and pleads him to keep her out of his woke activism. She hands him the question paper and claims that he has 2 hours to finish the exam. After the exam was over, He meets up with Miri and heads down to get something to eat. Before he can reach the dining area though, they get approached by Prince Lyle, who is Miri's older brother, and pissed at the fact that someone more popular than him is in the school right now. Kunon feels Miri tense up at the sight of her brother, but has no idea who he is facing at the moment. He was about to lash out as prince or not. No one talks shit to his bride-to-be. But before he could do anything, Ixio intervenes and tries to dissolve the situation. Unfortunately, Lyle and his cronies don't seem to be in a mood to talk nicely, and keep trying to escalate the situation. Just then, Kunon decides to take matters in his own hands, as he secretly uses his magic to collect all the magical droplets nearby and pulls it down at Lyle's trousers before claiming that the prince seems to have pissed his pants. The prince is furious, but too embarrassed to say anything as he walks away to get changed. While Ixio tells his brother to keep it down as no one can ever know that he is the one who did that to the royal prince of the kingdom. Ixio keeps racking his brains about what might happen now that they have created an enmity with the sixth prince of the kingdom. But Kunon doesn't really seem to care as he munches down on his burger, while Ixio prays that they qualify their exams without any further mishaps. Meanwhile, Lyle is pissed off at Kunon, and he is planning his revenge. He walks menacingly through the school corridors, and the students are all scared of him. He doesn't spare even the teachers and tells Cass to get back in the kitchen when she asks him to be a little quiet in the hallways. Back in the dining hall, Kunon asks Miri and Ixio what the hell is wrong with Lyle, and why did he not even try to hide his hatred. Miri replies that he probably did that to keep her status in check, because he is afraid she will overshadow him someday. Kunon is interested in the tea, and Miri tells him that Lyle is the sixth prince, and she is the ninth princess. In normal hierarchy, she is below him. But since she is engaged to someone bearing the hero's scar, her social status is rising quickly, and that scares Lyle. Miri says that now that Kunon has made his social debut, the two of them have higher social status than Lyle, and he is just desperate to stay relevant. Kunon finds all that politics stuff boring, and Miri tells him that even if he were not a magician or the bearer of the holy scar, she would still be happy to be engaged to him. Kunon uses his flirting skills and says that he is glad to be engaged to her too, and the next time he sees her dad, he will kneel before him in gratitude, even though he is never going to kneel before another man. With that, he says that he should apologize to Prince Lyle for his actions first. But both Ixio and Miri tell him not to even dare, because that is a worse idea than dating a girl who is still friends with her ex. Soon after that, it is time for Kunon's final exam, and he trains his magic with Jen before taking the test. As usual, he summons a blob of water and Jen tells him to change its sensation today. Kunon immediately uses his power to freeze the blob, and when Jen holds it, she says that it feels like an apple, which is not really possible, but nerd baddies are always right. She tells Kunon to touch a lot of things to understand how they feel, and then use them to alter his magic even further. Instead of using this chance to touch her, or some grass, Kunon goes and starts diddling a horse as soon as he reaches school. Ixio comes out and is taken aback on seeing his brother act so sus, but he decides to leave him to his methods. Just then, Miri comes running to welcome them, and Kunon acts extra dramatic, saying that since it is the last day he is going to meet her at school, he feels like the world is ending for him. After that, he goes inside where Cass tells him that he will be taking the final exam with the rest of the students. Kunon is shocked on hearing that, and he is quite excited because this is the first time he is going to get the real feel of his school life. He then turns to Cass and says that he will miss being alone with her in their special room, and she isn't really bothered by how inappropriate that sounds. She tells Kunon that she will be only watching over him and wishes him the best of luck for the test. Ixio remarks that Kunon seems to have become very close to Cass, and he affirms, saying that they talked a lot during the exams. He talks about how Cass took the exam to be a teacher following a guy she loved, but that loser failed the exam and only she passed. Now she is a teacher and he is a jobless bum, and Cass has no idea what she is doing with her life. Both Ixio and Miri are bothered about Cass's mental health after hearing the topics that she is talking about with a child, but just then, some students interrupt them because they are curious about Kunon too. Cass tells him to introduce himself, and Kunon introduces himself as Miri's fiancé and Ixio's little brother. Everyone is impressed by him for no reason at all, and Kunon says that he is really happy to see that his fiancé and older brother actually have friends, because no one had approached them till now, and he was sad thinking they were loners. Ixio tells Kunon not to diss them like that, and Miri gets embarrassed as she explains that she had asked all her friends to leave her alone so that she could spend more quality time with him. Kunon apologizes for not realizing her feelings, and then repeats that he is glad that both she and Ixio have friends. He didn't want to be direct with them and ask if they are loners because that would be rude, and Mama didn't raise a rude boy. He was almost ready to tell them that it is okay not to have friends by playing the sympathy card and telling them that he has got it even worse. Everyone else is convinced by his act, but Miri knows that Kuno has no issue being friendless, and he affirms. Soon, it is time for the exam to begin and Cass tells Kuno to stop diddling the pigeon and get to his seat. Miri starts leading him to his seat when suddenly, Lyle comes there and pushes both of them away. He is pissed at Miri because the news about the recent pant wedding incident has reached the palace, and even the servants were talking behind his back. Lyle thinks that everyone here is the same, and they must be bitching behind his back because they don't have the guts to say things to his face. He clenches his fists in rage, but then Kuno grabs his hand suddenly, introducing himself to the prince. He says that he didn't get the chance to greet him properly the other day, but he really wanted to get along well with his brother-in-law. The entire class is stunned on seeing this because no one dares to get close to Lyle, except a few bootlickers. On the other hand, this is the first time someone has greeted Lyle like this, and he doesn't know how to react to it. Kuno shakes his hand vigorously and Lyle is unable to get free from his grip, no matter how much he tries. He acts super woke and tells Kuno that he never gave him the consent to hold his hand or talk to him. Kuno, however, completely ignores that statement and says that Lyle has really manly hands and he wants them around his throat. This is too much for Lyle, and he immediately turns to me asking what the hell is wrong with her future husband. Instead of answering, Miri starts laughing because she never imagined Lyle could blush like that. Lyle is even more embarrassed as the entire class joins Miri in laughing at his reactions, and he turns to Kuno, ordering him to let go of his hand. Kuno finally leaves him alone, and the matter is resolved peacefully. Cass begins the exam, and once it is done and the answer sheets are checked, she announces that everyone passed the exam. Everyone is happy to hear that, and Kuno celebrates that he graduated with his brother and fiancé. Later that evening, he leaves for home and wishes everyone goodbye. Everyone is sad to bid goodbye to the quirky but charming boy, and even Lyle seems to have changed after meeting Kuno. The next day, his magic lessons with Jen resume, and she tells him to create a small typhoon. Kuno creates that, and then at Jen's order, he splits it into 10 water balls, colors them, and then changes their texture. Jen is satisfied with this, but Kuno has more to show. He says that he has learned something new recently, and then changes one water blob into a white pigeon that flies like the real thing. Jen falls to her knees, realizing that Kuno is officially a much better sorcerer than her, and she is going to lose the job of teaching him. She decides to reveal this truth to Kuno during tea time, and asks him to prepare himself mentally because she has shocking news for him. Kuno sends Aiko away before asking Jen if she is a goddess who came from another world to teach him, but now she must return to her divine dimension. Jen is amused by that idea, but she doesn't entertain it too much. She tells Kuno that she doesn't have anything left to teach him, and he is already better than her now. Kuno gets up and says that he doesn't want to let her go, because the little tricks she invented to keep him busy and extend her employment made him understand a lot more about magic than any normal class would. More than that, he is grateful because she was the one who inspired him to create eyes using magic. He is desperate to keep her as his teacher and offers to increase her salary. But Jen is honest for once and states that she was overpaid all this time, and now she doesn't have work to do. She tells Kuno that he should get a teacher who is much better than her to study further, but he refuses. He says that he grew so much because of her little tricks and demands her to deceive him further. As he says this, animals made of water come out from everywhere and start cuddling with Jen, who is even more sure of the fact that her role in Kuno's life is over now. With that, she leaves Kuno's house and decides to become a better sorcerer after being inspired by her students' hard work and dedication. Soon after that, Aiko tells Kuno that even Flora has resigned from her job because the curriculum is complete and Kuno has graduated. She didn't wait to say goodbye because she would be too emotional, and Kuno decides to write her a thank you letter. Aiko tells him to ask her if she has a handsome servant in her mansion, who is over 6 feet tall, because she is looking for a groom. Kuno asks Aiko if she really plans to quit her job and marry someone. Aiko affirms, saying that she feels that Kuno can look after himself perfectly now, and it is time for her to get married because the dating pool after that is quite bad. During dinner, Kuno tells his parents that all his teachers have quit and Jen told him to find an extraordinary magician to teach him next. Ixio says that the royal sorcerer Zio is quite famous recently, and his mom can vouch for that. Kuno asks his dad to appoint the guy named Zio as his teacher, but he tells him that's not how things work. He makes it clear that he cannot call the royal sorcerer here to teach him, and Kuno asks his dad what is the point of being the king's best friend if he can't do even this much. Kuno's dad tells him that only the king and people directly authorized by him can meet the royal sorcerers, who rarely leave the castle and don't meet commoners. Kuno understands his dilemma now, but he has a solution ready for that. He tells his dad that he will come with him to the royal palace the next time he goes to talk to the king, and then he will get lost there. The royal sorcerers will find him, and through some plot armor, he will be taken in as their student. Kuno's dad tells him to stop watching so much anime and K-drama because things don't work like that in real life. He says that his plan has no guarantee that it will work, but Kuno is confident that it will get him what he wants. He asks his mother to help him, and since she favors him a lot, she pleads with his dad to do something. The guy is a simp for his wife, so he agrees to talk to the king about the matter, even though he doesn't have much hope in the plan succeeding. A couple days later, a master sorcerer receives a file from another high-level sorcerer. He is taken aback at an apprentice sorcerer learning to become student of the royal sorcerer Zio. But the girl tells him that the boy seems talented and Princess Miri is head over heels in love with him. The master doesn't care about that and starts reading Kuno's file in detail, and that is enough to get him interested in the boy. A couple days pass by since then, and finally Kuno gets the call from the royal palace to present himself to the royal sorcerer. He gets into a carriage alongside his father, who looks pretty happy about the way things turned out. Kuno claims that the friendship between the king and his father must run pretty deep if he got ready for a demand such as his. But his father replies that the real reason why they are getting an opportunity to meet up with the royal sorcerer is because the head sorcerer of the court took a deep interest in Kuno and his abilities and wanted to meet with him as well. His father then asks what kind of magic he is able to do at this point, and Kuno immediately chants a spell and creates a small ball of water, which quickly converts into a black cat and sits down on his lap. His father is amazed by this, claiming that he can't believe that something like this could even be achieved by magic, and starts touching the little kitty. He is surprised that the cat doesn't even feel like magic or like water. It just feels like any other random cat that he would catch on the street. Kuno tells him that he has only recently mastered the looks of the animal, since before that he was only managing to create animals which were completely transparent. But from the past couple of times he is managing to change the color of the animals as he wants to. His father starts playing with the cat happily, and Kuno asks whether they should get an actual cat for that home. Like a typical dad, he refuses, claiming that they would create a lot of mess in the house, plus he might also trip over them and hurt himself. Above all that, he claims that Kuno's mother prefers dogs anyways, so he doesn't really have a choice in wanting a different animal. Soon they enter into the capital and are immediately greeted by a silver-haired girl named Rei, who is the second princess of the kingdom and the older sister of Miri. Kuno warmly greets her, claiming that he is very fortunate to have such a beautiful woman as her for his sister-in-law. His father wonders whether his son is for the streets, but decides to think about that later. Rei smiles, claiming that she has heard a lot about Kuno from her younger sister and would love to have a long conversation with him. She also notices a cat and asks them whether the cat would need any special food. But the moment Kuno's father places the cat back on the ground, Kuno stops his spell, and the cat once again nothing more than a puddle of water. Rei realizes that Kuno seems to be much more skilled than she earlier thought. While his father is sad about the fact that he didn't get to name the cat, Rei offers to take Kuno up to the Black Tower. While his father claims that he too will have a chat with the king, then maybe head home, Kuno tells him not to worry about him, as after the Black Tower, he has a mind to visit Miri and maybe take her out on a bougie date. His father tells him to enjoy his time there and promises to arrange a carriage for him whenever he decides to head back home. Rei soon takes Kuno up to the Black Tower and on the way asks whether he is comfortable walking or whether he needs any assistance. Kuno replies that he is perfectly fine and immediately starts asking her a bunch of questions that confuses her, as they are all Stephen Hawking level questions in terms of magic. She tells him that she can't have such an advanced discussion while walking and asks whether he knows about the number of children the current king has. Kuno has never thought about that till now, so Rei reveals that the king is a total baller and has produced 7 princes and 10 princesses one after the other. She is the second princess, while Miri is the 9th one. More than that, the interesting part about this country is that the succession of the throne doesn't work like normal, where the throne passes off to the oldest son after the king. In this country, they follow something called a meritocracy, where all the princes and the princesses will be evaluated on the basis of their skills and merits, which can vary based on their talents and the level of devotion they showed to a particular art. This means that even the youngest prince or princess has an equal opportunity to win the throne regardless of their age. She further tells him that she herself has already relinquished her right to the throne in this succession by choosing to become a mage instead, and is now working to hone her skills as one of the best wizards in the country. While he was passing through the hallway, A sudden feeling draws him towards the window where he aimlessly looks in the direction of a dark tower from which he could feel all kind of different magical beams. Soon Raisha tells him something very important as she thinks that there is a small possibility that he might get dragged pointlessly in the fight for the succession. She tells him not to affiliate himself with any factions until he is sure about his decision, and also tells him never to speak something which could be used against him to make him look bad. In return for such valuable insights, Kuno decides to return the favor by showing her his special magic technique where he freezes a thin layer of water beneath his shoes, creating a thin layer of ice which could help them basically ice skate. She loves the idea and immediately tells him to let her try it once. Kuno quickly uses the magic on her as well, and then both of them start skating through the corridors like a bunch of mad lads, while the guards try to chase after them, as they can't let Rei get hurt by anything. Unfortunately, Rei and Kuno are much faster than the guard and manage to escape them. But their luck soon runs out as a knight spots the two of them and immediately gives chase. Kuno asks whether they should stop, but Rei was having too much fun and tells him that they can probably outrun the knight. But that's where they were wrong, as the knight manages to catch them and takes them outside in the garden for a good scolding. Later, they were escorted towards the tower where he is soon introduced to Edge, the head sorcerer of the kingdom. Kuno is humbled by his presence as he realizes how big the world is. He earlier thought that Rei's magic was impressive, but compared to even that, H seems to be on a completely different level altogether. H immediately asks whether he was born with a water crest, and Kuno replies in the affirmative before claiming that he doesn't really have much idea about these crests. H explains that there are 7 different types of crests that the mages can bear, and they correlate to their magical affinities, such as fire, water, earth, wind, light, darkness, and foul, alongside that each crest has a rank in terms of stars from 1 to 5. Which makes Kuno's 2 stars a fairly common occurrence. Rei replies that even she is a 2-star crest wind mage. Kuno immediately understands it, claiming that he can immediately feel it, as himself and Rei are like American processed cheese, whereas H seems to be an artisanal wheel of aged parmesan. H agrees that the description seems good enough, and reveals that he is actually a 4-star. Immediately after that, H takes them all to the training ground below and tells Kuno that he is going to test him a little to gauge his magical prowess. Kuno gets a little intimidated, wondering whether this means that a royal mage will be ready to become his tutor if he manages to pass the test, but he doesn't really guess a lot of time to mull all that over, as H immediately calls forth an older student who is also a royal mage and tells him to demonstrate his water magic. The mage chants the spell, and immediately an array of magical droplets of water appear in the air, creating a brilliant pattern, while H turns towards Kuno and tells him to conquer the boy's magic with his own. He thinks about the time Jen would tell him about how not only can he create water, but he can also manipulate the water already present in the environment. Till date, it has never been a problem for him, but he has never actually tried to gain control over the water that another mage has created. He realizes that H has effortlessly created an assignment that neither he nor Jen thought about, and now he will have to deal with it on the fly. He decides to give it a go, and immediately tries to wrestle the control away from the silver-haired mage. At first he thought it might work, but he hits a roadblock when the water droplets start resisting, as the mage manages to hold his droplets under his own magic effortlessly. H seems to be very interested in what was going to happen next, but Kuno is not one to lose so easily, so he gives it his all and uses all his stamina to try and gain control. To everyone's surprise, Kuno manages to wrestle 2 of the water balls away from the highly trained and experienced mage before each puts a stop to it. Kuno drops to his knees, breathing hard, while the silver-haired mage honestly replies that he could have never thought that a mere boy could take away 2 of his water balls. He then turns towards Icha, claiming that he is willing to take the boy under his tutelage. But immediately the other mages start chiming in, claiming that even they would like to have Kuno as their pupil. H tells them all to shut up, as he wants to see what else can Kuno actually do, and asks him to create something that he has thought about. Kuno immediately creates a trampoline with the help of his water magic, and immediately H starts bouncing on top of it, having the time of his life. The other mages get in line wanting to have a go, as they want to understand how it works, and whether they can recreate it. Ach, however, tells Kuno that he wants him to stay the night in the castle, so that they can see what else is Kuno capable of. Kuno replies that unfortunately he has a date with Miri, so he needs to take her out for dinner tonight. Just then Rei asks him whether he can create any other animals from his magic, or maybe humans. Kuno replies that he can do both of these things, and immediately creates a human doll made out of water magic in the shape of his maid. It is still not perfected yet, so the maid is a little translucent, Plus, he hasn't dialed in their movements perfectly, so that's also an issue as of now. The silver-haired mage asks whether he can make the dolls do anything, and Kuno tells them about the time when he tried to make them fly, but it wasn't well received as the doll looked dumb while doing it. Touch immediately gets interested, and Kuno is forced to demonstrate. He starts playing around with the doll, sending her up in the air back and forth again and again, scaring half the people of the castle, which gets him scolded once again, and they are all forced to apologize. Soon the sunset comes, and Mage tells Kuno that he has successfully passed the tests, and he will personally assign Kuno a sorcerer so that he can learn to use his magic better. Kuno is overjoyed by that and goes to tell his father, who is pissed since he has heard complaints about his son twice in a matter of hours and scolds him for being irresponsible with his magic. Soon, his father leaves to head back to their mansion, leaving Kuno behind with Ray, who realizes that he needs to head out to Miri, or he will be late for dinner. Ray tells him that they must use their magic to reach Miri, otherwise they would be late, so they decide to do a little experiment as Kuno creates a water bubble, and Ray uses her wind magic to propel them forward like Aladdin's magic carpet as they soar through the skies and reach near Miri's chamber in no time. Unfortunately, Ray forgets to gradually decrease her magic and turns it off completely, which causes them to fall, and they get caught by the Knight Dario for the third time today, who is pretty pissed and once again gives them a long lecture, while Miri waits for her Prince Charming in her dress. Miri is also getting freaked out waiting for Kuno as she paces up and down her room, wondering whether her broom-to-be would even come or not. The maid tries to calm her down, claiming that Kuno must have stayed too long at the academy, and that's why he might be late. Thankfully, soon enough they hear a knock at the door, and the maid finds one of the guards waiting for her as he announces that Kuno has arrived and is waiting for the princess outside. The maid turns around and immediately finds Miri sitting on the couch, sipping some expensive tea, as if she wasn't just freaking out and running up and down her room. Before she could even finish her sentence, Miri was out of the room, walking briskly towards her waiting fiancé. She finds Kuno waiting for him at the base of the stairs, and he immediately apologizes for being late before trying to raise her up, claiming that the moon looks beautiful tonight, even though he hella blind. He asks Miri for her hand, which she graciously offers him, and he immediately guides her into his whip and takes her into a free Michelin star Gordon Ramsay restaurant. They enter the fine dine restaurant and are immediately offered very expensive sparkling water. But they are not broke boys like you, so they can afford to drink whatever they want. They both start drinking while Miri's maid notices the gentlemanly poise that Kuno exhibits from the way he carries himself. Miri starts the conversation and asks whether he got the chance to visit the Black Tower today. Kuno excitedly answers the question, revealing that he had the opportunity to meet with her older sister today, and claims that every single mage he saw at the tower was hella impressive, including the second Princess Ray. He also tells her that he has passed the mage test as well, but has no idea who his teacher is going to be. Kuno continues to flirt with the princess, who seems to be enjoying her night, even though her maid thinks that Kuno is pretty cringe. But young love and all, so whatever. Once done with their dinner, Kuno catches Miri by surprise as he grabs her arm and tells her that even though right now, having these dinners once in a long while is the best he could do, when they get married, every single night would look like this. This catches even the maid by surprise, who has watched too many book-talk reels and thinks that Kuno is no so cringe after all. Miri manages to control her emotions at that time, being all elegant, but the moment she reaches back to her room, she starts giggling like a little girl out of joy while thinking about all the things that Kuno promised her. A couple days pass by and Kuno returns back to his mansion and sits in his study, writing down a report when he gets called out by Aiko, who was washing some clothes, and asks if Kuno could help her. Kuno immediately uses a variation of his water magic and immediately creates a bunch of bubbly water that easily sweeps away any dirt and grime. Aiko thanks him for the help, but Kuno tells her that he was trying to finish a report which will be delayed now. Aiko tells him to stop being a loser and getting trapped within his rooms studying like a nerd. Kuno replies that he just wants to finish the report while everything is fresh in his mind. Aiko tells him that being a nerd won't get him any bitches, and if he doesn't spend time in the sun playing and soaking in fresh air, his growth will be affected. Kuno realizes the harsh truth that girls will always like tall men, but Aiko promises that she will like him regardless of his height, as long as he has a bid package. With that, they sit beneath the shade of a drying cloth when Kuno asks whether they got a letter back from the Black Tower, as it looks like they still haven't decided on who's going to become Kuno's teacher. His wishes seems to come true as a couple days later a letter arrives for him, and it turns out that the devilishly handsome Master Sorcerer Zio has been assigned as his new tutor. Kuno doesn't really know what to make of this man, as he has only heard about him from his mother, But Aiko starts going crazy for him, claiming that Zio is the most handsome man in the continent, and starts worrying about losing weight and getting her hair done so that she can look her best if in case Zio manages to spot her. Back in the castle, Ray comes in to meet Miri and tells her about the fact that Zio has been chosen as the new tutor for Kuno. Miri seems to be excited, as this would mean that Kuno gets to learn from the best sorcerer, while Ray sighs, claiming that she really wanted to be Kuno's sorcerer as he was really fun and would make for an interesting student. On the way through the corridor, Miri spots two of her older sisters on the way named Eve and Lydia, who smirk at her, and Miri immediately frozen on her spot. Thankfully, Ray is with her, which gives her some confidence, but Eve butts in, claiming that they have been hearing a lot about her fiancé Kuno, and jokes about how they are not yet married and are only betrothed, which means that he can technically fall in love and marry any other princesses he wants. This makes Miri insecure, but Ray speaks up, claiming that both of the girls are chopped to F, and Kuno wouldn't see them even if he had a working set of eyes. This makes the girls blush in anger, as they run past them, claiming that Ray should mind her own business and act more like a princess since she has already been scolded twice by a knight. Back at Kuno's mansion, he drinks tea alongside Aiko, while wondering what kind of a person is his teacher exactly, while Aiko is already blushing just thinking about Zio and the fact that she will be able to see him up close. Suddenly, a carriage stops at their door, and Miri hops out of it. Kuno is surprised to see her at this time unexpectedly, but immediately starts trying to raise her up by claiming that he has to mentally prepare himself to be around such a beautiful woman like her. Unbeknownst to him, Zio is also inside the carriage and listening to all his cringy bullshit while wondering why the hell is he being dragged into this. Kuno still has no idea about it and continues talking creepily about how he is sure that Miri has changed her soap. But when I said that to my coworker, I got a letter from the HR. Zio soon decides to walk out of the carriage, and Kuno immediately feels a different presence around him. He realizes that it can only be Zio, and while Aiko is freaking out on the inside, Kuno is just thinking about how strong Zio must be since he can literally feel his dense magical aura around him. Kuno immediately realizes that this man is much stronger than any of the mage he saw at the Black Tower, and might be even stronger than the Grandmaster himself. Miri notices the look on Kuno's face and immediately asks whether anything is wrong, but Kuno ignores her and greets Zio. Before introducing himself, Zio claims that he doesn't really care about all that, and makes it clear that he hates brats. Aiko thinks about how can be a mage so foul-mouthed, but at the same time finds it hot thanks to the book talk brain rot. Zio outright declares that he didn't choose to be his tutor, and this job was practically forced on him by the Grandmaster. Kuno doesn't really care about all that and simply answers that they are all bound by the reins of politics and hierarchy, so they can't do anything about it. Dario also introduces himself formally as Miri's guard, while Kuno apologizes to him for causing such a ruckus the other day. Soon they all sit down for some tea, which is a hassle for Zio, who can't tolerate the bullshit between Princess Miri and Kuno, who keep flirting back and forth. Zio finally steps in and tells them to keep it in their pants, as he is here to discuss magic and not to hear corny dialogues between two tweens. Zio decides to have some fun with Kuno and pull his leg a little and asks whether he knows anything about compound magic. Kuno replies that compound magic is a special type of advanced magic in which the spellcaster uses multiple different spells at once. Zio smiles and asks how many spells can he use it at once, but nothing could have readied him for the answer he receives, as Kuno replies that he can use 31 spells at once and can go up to 32 spells, but sometimes he ends up failing there. Zio is actually impressed by this and responds that he himself can go up till 50 spells, which surprises Kuno, who didn't think that anyone could be that gifted to be able to use so many spells at once. Zio then asks Kuno how did he manage to go past the 20 spells cliff, as that is where almost everyone fails. But Kuno replies that he simply clubbed a bunch of spells together and stacked them on top of each other. Zio seems impressed, as he didn't think that many people would be able to figure that bit on their own. He quickly realizes why so many other mages were mad at him for getting to teach Kuno, while they didn't get the chance even though they are the ones who breeded them into the Black Tower. At that time, he didn't really understand what was such a big deal, even though they told him that Kuno is really interesting. But even they probably don't have any idea about what an exceptional talent Kuno is. Zio finally gets a little more invested and gets up from his seat before telling Kuno to show what he can do, as he doesn't want to waste his time around someone who is all talk and can't back it up. He tells him to suck up to him and beg him to be his tutor. Miri immediately thinks about how Kuno will never do something like that, but she turns out to be very wrong, as he folds like a deck of cards calling Zio the best sorcerer in the world, and explaining how good he smells and how even a straight boy Lilk himself can fall for the dangerous mage like him. Zio starts getting creeped out by the freak and tells him to keep it in his pants before using one of his spells to create a wall out of the dirt. He tells Kuno to try and destroy the wall if he can, and he can use any methods he fancies. Before Kuno could begin though, he tells him to make a waterbed for him, which he has heard about so much. Kuno immediately uses his magic to create a water, which Zio claims that he will watch after sitting on that. But the moment he touches the bed, he gets transported into another world as he realizes how soft it is and immediately ends up sleeping. Meanwhile, Kuno inspects the wall and realizes that even though the wall looks very simple, it has an extremely dense magic spell running inside, which makes it practically indestructible. He also finds out that Zio has compounded his spell over 40 times to make it extra strong, but he doesn't fret much. In fact, he sits down with the princess for some tea, claiming that they should wait for Zio to wake up, and then he will break it. 2 hours pass by and Zio wakes up to find the sun setting over the horizon and his walls still standing. He asks Kuno whether he gave up, but Kuno responds that he was waiting, and now that Zio is up, he can deal with the wall. With that, Kuno walks up to the wall and uses his detergent water, which slowly washes away the dirt. Zio smiles as he realizes that instead of forcing his way through with a water blast like other people would have done, he chose the smarter route. Watching that, he decides to formally accept Kuno as his student and tells him that from now on, he will be assisting him with all his experiments starting tomorrow. If you've made it this far, you are an absolute legend. If you're enjoying the vibe, show some love by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. Now, without further ado, let's get back to the story. The next day, Zio arrives once again alongside Princess Mary and immediately calls out to Kuno, claiming that he is the luckiest boy in the world as he is getting the privilege to be taught by the best mage in the entire kingdom. Kuno is a master at sucking at this point and immediately starts buttering Zio up as he claims that he is definitely the luckiest in the world to be trained by the most handsome man in the kingdom. Zio seems satisfied and smiles, claiming that today's work is going to be hard, and Kuno shouldn't expect him to go easy on him. Kuno immediately starts acting as he was in a soap opera, grabbing his head, claiming that if Zio went easy on Kuno, he would simply think that he doesn't love him anymore. Zio gets a little creeped out by the little perv and tells him to keep it in his pants and takes him inside. Once inside the room though, Kuno's excitement dies out as he realizes that today's job is going to be noting down the memos that Zio has created into proper documents with good handwriting. Kuno knows that this is basically Zio's work, which he is too lazy to do and is forcing up on Kuno, who was so excited to learn all the different kinds of magic today. But alas, he doesn't have any options and agrees to do the work. Zio turns towards the rest of the crew and tells them all to piss off, as the documents here are national secrets, which can't be read by anyone apart from him. Kuno apologizes to Miri and promises to complete the work soon and come back to her. Miri smiles and leaves the room alongside the others. After when Zio turns towards Kuno and tells him to create the waterbed that he made yesterday, Kuno immediately uses his magic and creates a comfy and warm waterbed. Without a single word, Zio pops on top of it and goes into deep sleep. Kuno lets out a sigh and gets down to his work, while Miri takes Aiko aside in the gazebo outside and tells her that she is trying to learn how to fight with a sword from the past couple of days, but tells her not to reveal this information to Kuno yet. Aiko is surprised as it is not very common for princesses to learn how to fight with a sword, but she agrees to keep quiet. Miri soon gets ready and grabs her wooden sword before coming out into the arena against Dario. They start fencing against each other, and it's very clear that Miri has just recently started learning. But she is making quick progress as she wants to be good enough for Kuno. She knows that he has the hero's scar, which means that he is going to be super famous, and she needs to match him with her own skills and talents so that they can be seen as equal in everyone's eyes. Back in the room above, Kuno continues to decipher the letters from the old parchments and keeps getting stuck because the writing on the papers are utterly garbage, making it difficult to understand what's a letter and what's a diagram. While he was struggling with one of the memos, Zio ends up waking from his slumber and seems to be properly recharged now. He turns his attention towards Kuno and asks how far has he gotten with the task at hand. Kuno responds that he is nearly halfway done, but instead of praising him, Zio starts talking smack, claiming that even a blind person could work quicker than him. Kuno slaps back by claiming that anyone could turn blind if they try reading his handwriting. He claims that even an earthworm wrapped in mud and smeared across a paper would look better than his handwriting. Zio tells him not to compare his masterful work to a lowly earthworm, but Kuno simply tells him that he is definitely going to send him an invoice for all the work he is making him do. Zio tells him not to get too smart as he is being trained even at this moment. Kuno looks surprised, but Zio tells him that what they can read from a book retains as information in their brain, which they forget sooner or later, but the things that their brain tries to interpret, then their hands note down, get stuck in the deeper parts of their mind, and gets engraved as knowledge, which is not easy to forget. Kuno finally understands the reason for the wax on wax off and thanks him for the training. Soon enough, evening comes and Zio gets ready to leave once again. He tells Kuno to finish up all the remaining work by the time he comes next. But before he could leave, Kuno stalks him and asks what was the weird diagram-looking things on one of the memos which looked like a spell. Zio thinks about it, but realizes that it would be easier to show than to explain, so he tells him to visit him in the capital next time, and he will show it to him. Kuno gets excited, and then immediately turns towards the princess and tells her that he will see her very soon again. The very next day, he returns back to the capital and gets ready to enter the Black Tower once again, when he gets surrounded by the royal mages, who are happy to see Kuno back again, and start asking all sorts of questions. Before he could even answer though, Zio ends up arriving and tells Kuno to follow him inside. Rei asks Zio why the hell is he taking Kuno inside and asks horrified whether he is going to take Kuno to the demon room. Zio doesn't even bother with an explanation and tells Kuno to create the waterbed, which does its job perfectly, and soon enough, all the nosy students are asleep. They start walking once again, and on the way up, Zio asks whether Kuno has any idea about magical weapons. Kuno replies that magical weapons are special weapons that are able to channel the magic of its user. Zio nods in agreement, explaining that there are special mages whose only job is to create magical weapons for royal mages. With that, he opens the door to his study and reveals the entire room covered with dust and scrolls. Kuno is amazed but excited as he eagerly starts looking through the scrolls, finding one new spell after the others, which he has never tried before. He flips through the bundle of scrolls and comes across a special magic book, which was only available to a select few royal mages, and claims that he was going to use the power of nepotism to gain access to this book. He excitedly turns towards Zio and claims that he wants to live here forever. Zio turns around and tells him that he doesn't need to live here, and eventually he can have it all if he wants. With that, he turns his focus towards a box in front of him, claiming that he has been working on a special magical tool for the past few months, and the diagram that Kuno saw yesterday was an illustration of the same tool. Kuno walks up and opens the box, only to find it empty. Confused, he asks Zio what exactly does this thing do, and Zio responds that he is trying to create a device which can help them get whatever they want without moving. For example, he wanted an apple, the device will create one for them. Kuno claims that he would love to have a device like that and have it make pancakes. Zio replies that with the help of Kuno's water magic, he can finally start the testing phase of the product and launch it in the market. Zio claims that his earth magic can deal with the outer shell, while Kuno's water magic can deal with the intricate moving parts inside the device. Kuno realizes that this device could actually be a hit and agrees to work alongside Zio. Soon enough, they go down to have lunch, and that's where the headmaster of the mages tells Kuno about the school of wizardry and witchcraft, where mages from all over the world travel to attend. Kuno has never heard of this and gets excited by the thought. Zio tells him not to think about it too much right now, only mages above the age of 12 can enroll. But right now Kuno is only 10, so he can't do anything. 2 years pass by since that day, and finally Zio decides to test Kuno about everything that he has learned over the past 2 years. They take their positions in front of Miri and the others, and Kuno gets ready with his water magic to defend whatever Zio has in mind to throw at him. Zio smiles and creates a bunch of spikes from his earth magic and shoots it at Kuno, who is forced to use compound magic to create a bunch of water drops which soak in the damage and return as a tsunami towards Zio, breaking right at his feet. Zio smiles, claiming that he has passed the test, and Kuno is overjoyed to hear it. Following that, they enter back into the house, where Aiko brings out a magic pot which creates a fresh pie, just with the help of magic. Miri tastes it and claims that it tastes fresh out of the oven, and even Kuno claims that their product has been a hit in the market, but complains that he hasn't seen a single penny for himself, and all the cash flow has been going into Zio's pocket. Later in the study, Miri looks around the room claiming that Kuno and Zio have already collaborated in over 5 successful magic devices. Kuno claims that another one is in the making, and they have also released 5 new theories of magic in their new magic manual. Zio turns to him and tells him that he doesn't need to worry about the magic device they were developing anymore, and reminds him that he is turning 12 this spring. and should get prepared for the magic school. At first, Kuno refuses to leave as he thinks Zio is the only teacher he needs, but Zio tells him that he is an earth magic user and can't teach much about water magic. Moreover, the world is very big, and the magic school has loads of extraordinarily strong water mages as well. Kuno still doesn't really want to leave, but Miri gives him a final push, claiming that he should leave and become a great sorcerer, and promises that she will also work on herself and become a fine woman by the time they meet again. Later that evening, after bidding Zio a final goodbye, Kuno returns back to his study and thinks about how in the past few years he got so used to not using his eyes and sensing everything that he forgot his one greatest ambition, that he wanted to create a pair of working eyes for himself. He realizes that the only way he could ever do that is if he becomes stronger and better as a mage, and that can only happen if he gets tutored by a true water mage. Several days pass by as he gets dragged by an obsession to find a way to properly create a working set of eyes. And after several trials and errors, one fine morning, he finally gets it. He realizes that he has been trying too hard and thinking of complex things, whereas the answer is very simple. He just needs to create a mirror which can reflect the world and transmit it to his brain so he can understand what he is seeing. With that in his mind, he immediately gets down to work, and soon enough, he opens his eyes for the first time in his life and sees the view in front of him. Tears fall out of his eyes, and that too is a first for him. He walks around the room looking at books and finally at a window to see what he looks like in the reflection when he suddenly sees a giant insect monster standing behind him. To his surprise, the crab simply stands there unmoving, and a little while later Kuno realizes that this thing is not really a threat to him. He turns back to his invention and uses his magic to create a mirror in front of him. Ever since he decided to learn magic, he took a vow that after he is done creating a new set of eyes for himself, he would have a good look at the person he hates the most, which is himself. He remembers about all the times his parents and the servants had to go out of their way to make sure that he didn't get hurt. Once the mirror was created, he finally opens his eyes and takes a long good look at himself. He notes that he doesn't seem to be very tall, nor does he have any beard to speak of, but that might be because he is still a child. He then turns towards the crab once again and tries to make conversation with it. But the crab is just as mute as it was before, blankly staring ahead while not moving a single muscle in its body. Kuno calls Aiko, who arrives without wasting a single second. But she doesn't give the crab a single look and continues talking to Kuno, asking whether he wanted something. Suddenly, she notices a weird magical ball floating near him, and the fact that his eyes are open instead of closed. She immediately asks out of joy whether he managed to successfully create a working set of eyes. Kuno smiles and nods, to which Aiko flings himself over him, congratulating him on his success, but in the process throws the magical ball up in the air, which causes Kuno a lot of dizziness. She claims that they must tell his father immediately and tells him that she is going to cook a feast today in his honor. Kuno looks back at the crab again, who stares at him blankly, while Kuno wonders whether he should just ask Aiko to cook it and serve it for dinner. He then returns his gaze towards Aiko once again and notices that she seems to have a horn on her head. He asks her seriously whether she has a horn on her head, but Aiko jokingly replies that she only has a horn on her head when she is angry, but it goes away when she is happy. Kuno doesn't know what to make of it, but thinks to himself that for some reason he never thought of Aiko in his mind with a horn on her head. Kuno realizes that he needs to continue practicing his hold approach tactics if he wants to become the Rizzler, so he immediately starts flirting with her, claiming that the horn makes her look very horny. Aiko doesn't really know what to say to that, so they simply move outside. This is the first time Kuno is able to see the outside world with his own eyes, and he stands there out on the field, looking ahead at a beautiful scenery of grassy meadows, faraway mountains, and a castle in the middle. Surprisingly though, he doesn't see what any normal person would see, but instead his colors are all inverted, and maybe not calibrated properly in the settings. The sun looks black to him, the bright blue sky looks a dull purple, and the grass a deathly pale blue. Even Kuno feels like something is wrong, as none of the books mentioned the sun to be black in color and the sky so purple. Aiko comes from behind and helps him wear a cloak to escape from the cold, and tells him that they should go ahead towards his parents' manor to give them the good news. Kuno finally decides to ask Aiko the question that has been bugging him for a while, and asks whether she can see the giant crab standing behind him. Aiko thinks that Kuno is just creating some fantasy stories and tells him to make her really cool in the story. Kuno realizes that it's pretty useless to talk to this woman, so they continue walking through the meadows with the crab towards his father's manor. He knows that the experiment was a massive success, as he can see everything now, But something is gnawing at his mind, and he feels like something went wrong during the experiment, and he shouldn't be seeing some of the things that he is seeing. Once in the manner, he finally literally sees his brother instead of metaphorically as before, which will make many of the commenters happy who had a personal issue with my writing before. His mother and brother are both overjoyed to hear that he can finally see, and his mother starts crying as she looks at him with a smile, while his brother praises him for doing something which has never been done before. Kuno can't really concentrate on all this, though, as he sees his brother with a beautiful pair of wings as if he just came back from a pride parade, while his mother has eyeballs of different colors. He thinks about how both of them look cool as hell, and no one ever told him about these things. He tells his mother that she looks like a heroine from a play about a princess, and even his brother looks cool. He turns towards his brother and asks whether their parents are discount angels or something. But this family has a disease of not answering the question, so his brother replies that he doesn't know about all that. He then turns towards Aiko, asking whether people in this world can have wings, but Aiko acts like an English teacher trying to forcefully find a meaning to something like 6-7, and tells Kuno that everyone is born with wings when they are born, and Kuno himself has just finally spread out his wings. By reaching his fullest potential, he soon realizes that he is surrounded by idiots and decides that things like the crown, the horn, the eyes, and the feathers are immaterial, and only he can see them, which means that something is wrong. Suddenly, he hears his father running towards the room, and he wonders what his father would look like, but to his annoyance, his father looks like a contestant on Nickelodeon after a green slime bath. His father happily congratulates him on his achievement, and claims that he will send a letter to the capital immediately about Kuno's success. Soon they all leave the room, leaving only Kuno and his brother behind. So Kuno thinks that now he can finally ask some questions and asks whether his father is usually a slimeball. His brother immediately tells him to shut his mouth, as his father would end up crying if he heard so much truth from his own son. Kuno sighs and just smiles, thinking about how the combined ache of his household is lower than a broken table lamp, and decides that he will just ask all his queries directly to his teacher. The next morning, his wishes come true as the royal carriage from the capital arrives, carrying the princess, Sir Dario, and Zio himself. Kuno immediately runs down to greet Miri and warmly welcomes her to his manor. Miri is beyond happy at the fact that Kuno can see again and claims that he has successfully done what no other person has been able to do till date. Kuno keeps his eyes closed as he is scared to look at his future wife, fearing that she might be shocked. But Miri asks Kuno to open his eyes as she wants him to see her for what she is. Kuno slowly opens his eyes and takes a look at her. He notices her regal posture, her beautiful blonde hair that shines in the sun like a million threads of gold, and her smile, which is very demure and very mindful. Just when he thought that at least his fiancée doesn't have any weird thing on her, he notices a single feather on top of her head. He takes a sigh of exhaustion at this bullshit. But Miri thinks that he didn't like what he saw and starts getting insecure. Kuno immediately uses his Rizzler skill set to make Miri feel good about her again, as he compares her to the feather of a dove flying freely in the sky. Dario comes out of the carriage at that point and claims that this dove has been getting better and better at swordsmanship, and now she is more of a hawk than a dove. No notices a beautiful ethereal sword on his back and immediately asks about it. But Dario thinks that he is talking about his usual sword and starts talking about the steel and how he saw it once and forged in fire. Kuno realizes that his ethereal sword is not real and his eyes are just playing tricks on him. Suddenly, he hears Zio's voice coming from behind and looks up at him, only to see a golden light emanating from him, so strong that nothing was visible in the glare. Kuno covers his eyes, asking whether he is the teacher, claiming that he can't see anything because of the brightness. Zio thinks that Kuno is just sweet-talking him and replies that he is always bright with a shining presence. Kuno doesn't know how to make these self-centered idiots realize what he is trying to say. He covers his eyes and tells Zio that he wants to discuss something alone and manages to get him in a room where he reveals everything he is able to see. Zio simply laughs at the absurdity of the situation, as he can't believe that Kuno sees Miri as a girl with a single quill on top of her head. Kuno tells him not to take his problems lightly, as he doesn't want to marry Miri while he has a crad always by his side and Miri has a quill on top of her head for absolutely no reason. Zio thinks about the problem that he is seeing the scenery in a different color than what he should see. Zio comes to the conclusion that there could be two possibilities, one being that he is able to see the shape of people's soul, which means that the crad is the representation of his own soul. And the other option is that he is having a serious case of magic sickness, which is causing him visual hallucinations. Zio remembers the time he was going through a forest with a very strong magical field, which caused him to get sick, and it felt like he was drunk on too many drinks, and started seeing weird creatures around him. Kuno realizes that it seems very similar, but Zio claims that they don't have enough data to decide what's true and what's not. Moreover, he tells Kuno that every animal sees things in different colors. That doesn't mean that their sight is flawed, so he should think about his vision as a gift and nothing else. By the time they come outside, the sun is already setting. Zio immediately starts laughing at the thought of Miri with a feather on her head. The next night, they all celebrate Kuno's 12th birthday, which also begins a new journey in his life, as the next day he will be leaving for the magical academy. His father gifts him a new wooden staff, while his mother gives him a new quill set. His brother hands him a book of good places to eat, becoming the Michelin guidebook of his era. While later in the night, Miri finally reveals her own gift, which turns out to be a bracelet, which she has a matching pair of. Kuno tells her how much he is going to miss her and promises to come back to her as soon as possible. They both hold hands for the last time in a while under the moonlight sky, and the next day, his entire family gets ready to see him off. His mother can't contain her tears, but his father tells her to act strong, as Kuno is going to find it extremely hard to leave them all behind and might cry in front of them. To their surprise, nothing like this happens. In fact, Kuno doesn't even hug them and straight up gets on the cart and says later fam before leaving in the carriage, telling his family that he might come back in the next couple of years, but he might not, so who knows. With that, he gets comfortably seated with Aiko and starts dreaming about all the new people he is going to meet at the academy and wonders how strong the sorcerers there are. Kuno and Aiko continue their journey for 5 days, after which Aiko starts getting bored and asks how long will it take them to reach the academy. Kuno reveals that the academy is pretty far away, so their best bet would be to estimate around up to a month of travel time till they reach the academy. Kuno knows that Aiko has decided that she would not be going to the academy with him, but asks whether she is sure about her decision. Aiko replies that she has been at a marriageable age for a while now, and she wants to get married and settle down so she can start her life in the truest sense. She claims that if she continues to go with him, she would get too old for any good matches. She claims that it's now or never, as if she gives up now, it will mean that she gave up on the idea of having a life altogether. Kuno tries to emotionally blackmail her and asks whether she thinks that he can live without her, and Aiko replies that if that's truly the case, then would he be willing to cast the Princess Miri aside and marry her instead. Kuno immediately shuts up, knowing that he has no replies for that, and looks out the window where he finally spots his grandfather's manor looming in the distance. They finally arrive at the manor and Kuno tries to remember when was the last time he came here. Aiko remembers everything well and replies that Kuno forced his entire family to come here around 4 years ago, when he heard that his grandfather has a huge library filled with magical books. At that time, Kuno was doing his absolute best to learn magic in any way possible, so to force his family to accompany him. He proceeded to do a cringy TikTok dance till they all agreed to come. Kuno smiles when the door behind him opens and his grandfather emerges happily with open arms, claiming that he missed him very dearly. Kuno returns with the same energy and rushes towards him, and they both start hugging each other. Kuno is still seeing things and sees his grandfather with a bunch of demonic horns on his head. His grandfather claims that on the occasion of him getting accepted in the magical academy, he will buy him anything that he wants as a gift. Aiko immediately tries to interrupt the old man and clears her throat before claiming that before he does anything, Kuno's mother wanted him to read the letter she sent him. Kuno's grandfather, however, doesn't seem to hear her at all, and continues asking Kuno whether he wanted jewels, and starts calling for a jeweler. Aiko interrupts him once again, telling him to read the letter from his daughter first. So he takes the letter back into his study. He takes out his reading glasses and gets immediately annoyed, as his daughter knew of his tendencies and has put a limit to how much money he can spend on Kuno, claiming that it shouldn't be more than $10,000. He is mad at that, claiming that $10,000 are nothing in this economy, but Kuno reminds him that he is still just 12 years old. And Aiko claims that 10K is 3 months of her salary. The grandpa is still hell-bent on getting him something big, telling Kuno that it would be fine if they don't tell his mother about it. But Kuno claims that the thing he wants right now is a different maid, since Aiko wouldn't be accompanying him after this point. His grandpa then brings forward the new maid Riko, who is Aiko's younger sister and has a horn on her head as well. She greets Kuno warmly, claiming that she took the job because her sister recommended it and the pay wasn't too bad. She wants to save up for the wedding and already has a fiance, so she is not open to any happy ending services. Kuno tells her not to worry, as he himself has a beautiful fiance and that they should cherish them more than anything else. Riko agrees, claiming that her and her fiance are going to open a store in future, so she is saving for that as well. A little while later, the maids start getting the dinner table ready, and Riko claims that she expected a stuck-up brat since he was supposed to have the hero's scar. But Kuno seems to be a pretty chill guy. Aiko claims that Kuno mostly only care about his magic, and will oftentimes forget to even have a meal, so she should be ready with some sandwiches so that he can eat while working as well. This reminds Aiko of everything that she has gone through with him. When first Kuno's father hired her specifically for his weird son, she was a little confused, but soon she started to truly care about him and went through so many highs and lows together. She remembers the first time Kuno dressed up in his uniform to go to school, and the first time he was able to see her with his own eyes. This reminder makes her sad, and she turns towards Riko, telling her that Kuno is still a child regardless of his reputation, which means that he is highly trusting of others, so it is going to be her job to make sure he is kept away from harm's way in any form. Riko claims that Kuno has a charming personality and knows how to compliment a woman, which means that he would be the prime target for any and all girls in the academy. This means that there is a high possibility that he will end up becoming a womanizer. Aiko can't bear the thought of it and tells her sister to shut up, as Kuno is an angel, and he would never do anything like that. The next morning, Kuno packs up his bags and gets ready to leave when Aiko comes to his room to tell him that his carriage is ready for departure. He thanks Aiko for everything that she has done for him till now, claiming that he would have never become the man that he is today if not for her. He claims that it would be a couple of years before he sees her again, and Aiko tells him not to worry as she will be waiting for him and will probably be a married woman by then with a child of her own. They hug it out, and then Kuno gets inside the carriage alongside Riko. His grandpa begs him to stay back and secretly live with him instead, but Kuno doesn't care and starts the carriage, leaving his grandfather and Aiko behind. Kuno turns towards Riko and asks whether she is okay leaving her fiancé behind, as it is going to be several years before she is able to see him again. But Riko claims that it shouldn't be an issue since she talked with him about it, and since it's for the business that they are planning to open, they need the money. Kuno asks about what kind of business are they planning to open, and Riko replies that they have decided on opening up a restaurant since she likes cooking anyways, and if in case their restaurant does badly, they might get featured on Kitchen Nightmares and get the opportunity of being called a donut by Gordon Ramsay himself. Day after day, they get closer to their destination when they finally enter the kingdom of Derishik, known for its magic. They start walking through the streets, and Riko realizes that the entire town seems to be magic themed. While walking by one of the stores, Kuno notices a bunch of interesting looking magic books, so he enters inside to have a look. He is amazed to see the selection of books there, but Riko asks what's so cool about them, since his grandfather has a library with thousands of books. Kuno claims that he has already read all the books present in his grandfather's library, which were not a lot in terms of magic books. But this store is dedicated to only magical tomes, and they all are incredibly rare. Riko asks whether he is going to buy anything, but Kuno tells her that they would have to spend a huge chunk of money for that. Riko peeks at the price of a single book and is shocked to see that one singular book can cost up to $5 million. She claims that she won't be able to earn that much money in multiple lifetimes, and even a quarter of that money would be enough to open her store and multiple branches as well. Kuno laughs, claiming that these magical books are one of a kind. That's why it costs a fortune to buy a single one. Before they could leave though, a woman with glasses walks up to them and asks Kuno whether he is a magician and studies at the magical academy. Kuno smiles at her and replies that he is just an applicant as of now, but the woman seems very interested and asks him to show what kind of magic he can do. Kuno immediately decides to riz her up and creates a small cat with his magic, which is a complete hit as she immediately starts cuddling it, claiming that it's one of the cutest things that she has ever seen. Kuno asks whether she is a magician as well, but the woman replies that she was not gifted enough, but she loves magic, so she decided to work in this line. She also claims that Derishik is going to be intense this year, since the Sage from the Holy Kingdom is also enrolling this year. She then pulls out the book, claiming that it's a first copy of the book by the most famous sorcerer Zio, and she is willing to give it to him at a great discount. Kuno, however, declines and leaves the shop alongside Riko. She asks why did he decline the deal since it was a bargain, but Kuno replies that the book was most probably the copy that he made himself when he was working with Zio. Later they enter another store selling all kind of clothes. Riko starts trying on different things, while Kuno also felt all the fabric around him. He asks the storekeeper what kind of animal the fur was taken from, and the keeper tells him that this fur was from a dark fox. Kuno thinks about it for a moment before creating a dark fox right in front of him. The keeper is shocked by this, as the animal feels exactly like the real deal, which confuses him, But Kuno reveals that he can create anything if he knows what they feel like. The storekeeper starts thinking and asks whether he can create a woman for him. This enrages Riko, who tells the thirsty storekeeper to keep it in his pants and calls him an incel before leaving the store. They move from that tiny town and move towards the capital of Derishik, where they finally arrive after a couple of days and are immediately greeted with a huge magical academy, which is even bigger than what Kuno had first imagined. Riko asks what is going to be their living situation, and Kuno tells her not to worry, as they will get a dorm where she will stay with him. Once inside though, their hopes are crushed when the receptionist reveals that all the dorms are already full, and if he wanted one he should have applied for it long ago. Not knowing what to do, they get out of the academy and Riko asks whether they should take a hotel instead. Kuno replies that they are supposed to stay here for several years, and staying in a hotel won't be a very cheap experience. He wonders whether he should just find a room for rent, when the receptionist comes after them and hands them some flyers with details of real estate agents who can show them properties in the nearby areas. Kuno's eyes immediately lights up as he thinks about renting a house just for the two of them and living on their own, just like how he did back in his own country. That very day they even managed to get a beautiful house close to the academy. The next morning they go back to the academy for the entrance test, but the receptionist tells Riko that she can't go inside as only students and staff are allowed past this point. Riko tries to bribe her, but they are not in India, so it doesn't work. Riko waits outside, while the receptionist named Liu takes Kuno inside through a corridor and out onto a grassy field where he finds 3 other people already waiting for their assessment. But that's where this video ends. As soon as new episodes drop, I'll be covering them right away, so make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. Also, don't leave just yet. Head over to the channel and check out our other recaps. There's plenty of epic stuff waiting for you. Go binge watch and enjoy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.